Hello, my name is Mary Miele. I am a tutor, a teacher, a parent, and the founder of Evolved Education Company. We are a full-service tutoring and advisement company for all of your educational solutions. On this podcast, we'll explore ideas, techniques, and resources that you can use to support your school-aged child to conquer any learning issue. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, everybody. This is Becky Reback. I work with Mary Miele here at the Evolved Education Company. I'm really excited to be here on our podcast again to flip the script yet again. I think the last time it went really well, where we talked with Mary about some new and exciting ways that we are evolving, no pun intended, but pun intended, our tutoring. And today we're here to talk about executive function. This is the September 2022 podcast edition, and we are starting off the school year. And so we thought the best place to start is executive function and making sure that everyone has a strong, organized start to learning this year. So without further ado, I'll introduce Mary, who is going to talk to us about our Evolved Education Integrated Executive Function Coaching Model, which is a mouthful, but it really works, we promise. So Mary, thanks for having me on to interview you again today. It was so fun last time, so I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. It's so fun that we get to just chat, I think, about our work and just give everyone an insight into what we're doing here that is so evolved. So I just know we got so much amazing feedback last time around this format. So we're just going to keep it up. When we know something is working, we just do it. Yeah,
exactly.
So, all right. So that's sort of where this came from. So I know it is a mouthful. It's an Evolved Education Integrated Executive Function Coaching Model. And the reason this came about was because I was working with students in the past couple of years on their executive function work. And I noticed some things that we were doing here that were really working. So when that happens, I'm so excited and I want to be able to write about it and share it with everyone. And that's really what we did. So we created this integrated model that is based on research. And I did a training this summer with our team and with other learning specialists in our community. And I think it was very well received. So I'm excited to talk with everyone today about what this model is for the parents who are listening and how you can use it to really help your child at any age to have more executive functioning skills.
Yes, absolutely. So before we get into exactly what the model is, I want to define executive function. It's such a hot term these days, and everyone's talking about it. Everyone's calling me as the head of tutor services saying, I need an executive function tutor. And I'm like, okay, great. So let's talk about what that actually is. What are executive functions? Why are they important for anybody, but especially our kids as they go back to the school year?
What a great question. And I agree. I think even for me, as I wrote this book on the integrated model, it took some time for me to also solidify my true understanding of executive functioning, because our industry and teachers and everybody around me seems to also put a lot of other definitions into the way we think about this. So I just want to maybe peel back the onion layers and get to the root of what it really is. And then we can talk about some of the ways that it extends into some other things that I know everyone also qualifies executive functioning as, right? So to start, it involves three major areas: cognitive flexibility, which means it's your process of thinking about something in many different ways. You use cognitive flexibility often in learning because you weigh various perspectives as well as different characters' points of view when you're reading. You can also take a look at a problem for math, and maybe you're going down one way, one path of solving it, and you need to change course because it's not really working. So it's used a lot in the process of being a student, but cognitive flexibility is one of those key executive functioning pieces, right? Then the next one is working memory. And Becky, you gave me the best way to describe this. Do you remember?
That's my favorite metaphor here.
Yes, it's your favorite metaphor, which I love. It's a Post-it note that goes into your brain. Everyone has a different size Post-it note, and you place information onto that Post-it note that you then use and sort of manipulate around while you're also remembering it. So the way that would translate would be, if you're reading a chapter book, you're going to remember information from the first chapter and build on it into the meaning of the second chapter. And if you're writing something, you might write something in your first sentence of the paragraph, and then you're holding that context into your mind, and then you're writing what comes next in the second sentence. You could also be following your outline that you have a little bit imprinted into your brain as to where you're going with something. Working memory is used just throughout the life of a student. So it's a really important executive functioning piece that we look at. And then inhibition or inhibitory control is also known as a person's ability to intentionally suppress attention or ignore distraction or stop an impulse action or overcome a routine or action that is highly learned. And this is really where we also get into sustained attention around a task. We're able maybe as a student to avoid the noises in the hallway when something is happening in the hallway and we're supposed to be listening to the lesson in our classroom, right? Or we're maybe able to attend even though we're feeling a little hungry, or we really want to go hang out with our friends instead of being in this class, right? So there's those kinds of inhibitions that we know are part of executive functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that description. I think it's so important that we all understand. And, obviously our podcast is geared towards parents of students, of learners, but I also think this is throughout our entire life and work and play and everything that we do. So having a good understanding of it, even as an adult, is really important.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the model that we created and why move forward with kind of making this framework that we follow in order to support our students in their executive functions.
Sure. So the model really comes from, again, the practice of working with students. And what I wanted to do was really create a model that we could just continue to evolve within, if that makes sense. So it would always be feeding from current information, what we know in the field, things like that. So it's really a broader model. And it involves academic research at the first pillar. So that means that we bring in what's happening in the colleges around the different academic research for executive functioning, but also for learning as well, because students are taking part in a learning process. Then we also take a look at areas of inquiry and instruction as the second pillar. So that means that we not only look at executive functioning within the life of a student at school, but we also look at it at home. We look at it maybe on the field for athletics. We look at it on the stage for arts, performing arts, projects, things like this. And we look at all areas of a student's functioning. And that's the second pillar. And then the third pillar is assessment. So when we work with students, we assess them using different assessments that are available to us in the field. And these might evolve as we go forward in the next 10 years. But right now we have some assessments that come to us from neuropsych evaluations, the mind print learning assessment, as well as questionnaires that we have targeted to parents and students to get a more complete picture of how executive functioning works for a student. And then the fourth pillar is strategy, instruction, and skill mastery. And this is where we teach a student to have a strategy for something that isn't very strong in executive functioning. And that strategy becomes a skill once they use the strategy on purpose over and over and over again and remember it in our sessions by encoding it each time. So there's really 4 parts to the model. It's a little more macro, right? So it's academic research, areas of instruction and inquiry, assessment, and then strategy and skill instruction.
And I think what's so important, not even just about this model, but everything we do at Evolved, is it's very bespoke. It's very based. Yes, we have these pillars and this framework that we're kind of following. So there's a little bit of quality control across everybody who's going through the executive function coaching model, integrated coaching model. And there's we have an idea of where we're going, but we're really responsive to the needs of each individual student, which I think is really important. That I think sets us apart from a lot of other people. We're not just doing one set program or one set curriculum. We're really giving a student a strategy that's based on what they really need.
Absolutely. And that was really my intent always around building this company, as you know. And I think that this model allows me to train an individual around the executive function coaching that I know works. And it gives that person enough space and room to pull assessments, to pull strategies, to look at different areas of inquiry and instruction, to pay attention to different points of research based on what the student needs. And that's what's so actually exciting, right? So when we get somebody in to train them, we're saying, hey, as of 2022, here's the research that's available about executive functioning. Here's the research that's available around learning. Here's some areas of inquiry that you might look at with your student. Here's some assessments that you might use with your student. And here is the way in which we actually build these skills. We do that through integrated strategy, instruction, and skill mastery. Once a provider has those different, pieces of information and training and the invitation to use the model, they are able to create something very bespoke for the student. So it doesn't look like this. It's not me handing a teacher a workbook or some kind of written curriculum and saying, lesson 1, you need to do this. Lesson 2, you need to do this. Like, it's not that way, by design, because that's not how students build their executive functioning skills. They do it when they're in a point of pain. They do it when they don't know how to proceed through something that they need to do as a student. That's what we need to integrate. We need to coach into what is challenging for a student. And that's how come this works really well.
Yeah, absolutely. My next question was going to be, what is the model? But I think you've given a really good, description into that. Is there anything else you would say you would want to add about what this model is or isn't?
Sure. Well, I think it's just important to understand that it's always being informed by our field. And if you remember, our field of special education is only 3 decades old. And so it's, 3, 5, something like that. My working memory there was not great. Let's just put it that way. But 1976. So it's in its 4th, 5th decade of existence, right? And it's really important to understand that we haven't really studied this all that much for kids. The research really is there for very young kids, and it's there for adults, but it's really not there for teenagers who come to us all the time for executive function coaching, right? So it's just important to know that part of our work here is to continue reading and learning and evolving what we're doing based on what the field is doing in the academic sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important that we're always evolving and changing. So like you said, we have these pillars in this framework, but we're bringing in the newest research. We're bringing in the newest understanding of whatever piece of it that we need to bring in. It's not just going to stay like this forever. Let's talk about parents and what parents can learn and how they can support their children, and what are some takeaways for parents as they support their children through executive functions. What can they do? What can they learn?
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing for parents to know is just that if you hire somebody to help your child with executive functioning, I really want that person to be delivering strategies that have a name and that your child can talk through in a practical way for them, whether that be in a multisensory way, as in they're using note cards to kind of show the different processes, or if they have a document where they have the how-tos written out. You should be able to see the strategy that your child is getting in that session. I think that also it's really important that parents take this as a longer term investment in the work that we do with students, because we're asking kids to change their behavior within an area that has been challenging for them. So they may have come up with a way to cope or manage that particular task that isn't very effective. And now we're asking them to change that process, change that neural pathway in their brain. And that doesn't just happen overnight. It happens when we get into a session, and what it looks like is a student will tell us how they're going to do that which they can't do. And by encoding it out loud or in a multisensory way, by writing it or by seeing it again, they have a better chance of using that new process on their own later on. So it's a longer term commitment to build your executive functioning in this way. So the other thing I would say to parents is try to be as proactive as you can. We know that kids learn a good amount of executive functioning between the ages of 2 and 6 from the research. This is very young, and most families, again, are coming to us as teenagers because they don't know what to do. They're missing assignments. They can't pack up their bags. They're not turning things in. There are different pain points that are coming up for them. But we can do a lot proactively for very young children by routinizing certain processes for them and helping them to be organized in their tasks, their time, and their things. So those are 2 takeaways that every parent listening should really think about. And even if you do have an older child and you're thinking, well, Mary, you're not talking to me because I have a teenager and how can I be proactive? Well, you can still be proactive because you can actually investigate how your child's doing with their executive functioning. And you can start to address it by offering them an invitation to create a strategy to do their work in a more effective and optimal way, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think noticing, even if you, the parent, notices something and you bring it to your child's attention and they maybe, I mean, hopefully they do something about it, but even if they just notice that it's not as effective as it could be or as efficient as it could be, that is a step in the right direction. I think, the mindfulness of knowing that there's something that's not working perfectly is a lot of the battle, because then they can take steps to learn a strategy to make it work better.
Oh, such a good statement there. I think that's so crucial. And really, I love the word invitation. I use it so frequently with my teenagers because I don't want to assume that I know all of the things that will work for them in a strategic sense. I want to invite them to participate in that strategy creation because I'm so excited about what their brains can come up with. And so, to your point, if you're a parent and you notice something isn't quite right, what a lovely gift you're giving your child just by simply saying, I noticed that you're really struggling with getting your work done earlier in the day and you're going to bed so late at night. And then in the mornings, you're so tired. Like, I really wish that could be better for you. I think it could be if we used a different strategy. Would you like to do that with me? I'm just going to give you the invitation because whenever you're ready, I'm happy to work with you on that, or I have a resource for you. But I think it's so nice because over time, if a kid keeps hearing that from you as the parent, first of all, they just feel heard, listened to, and attended to, but also you're really providing leadership to them around the fact that, hey, it doesn't have to be so painful. You don't have to go about working this way if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. And that's a great life lesson. Like, you could tell your adult kids that. You could tell yourself that, right? And I think that's what's so fun about what we do with kids, because once we get them involved in this process of coaching, they are starting to see that they can take part in a process of improvement and less pain around their learning, which is really important.
Yeah. I want to go back to one thing you said, which I think, I have young children. My daughter is 4 and I have a baby, but he's not quite there yet. My 4-year-old, we talk a lot about what strategy she used in order to solve a problem. And the other day we were in the car and she was asking a question and she kind of worked through it herself. And I was like, that was an awesome strategy. We were counting and she wanted to know what number came before 15. And I said, I don't know what number comes before 15. And she just started counting up. She started at 1. Now, can I work on her strategy to start at 10 instead of 1? Sure. Right. But I'm talking to her about that word strategy, which I think for a long time, our students that are maybe teenagers didn't necessarily hear the word strategy or weren't taught strategies. So they don't know that there actually are strategies to solve problems or work more efficiently. So I think that's a one way parents of young kids, also even teenagers, start using the word strategy. Wow, I noticed you did X. That was an awesome strategy, right? And that builds their capacity to learn a strategy and know that there is strategies out there to solve the problems that they're having.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think that's really also a great takeaway for anyone listening is just, I want you to do this exercise for me. Actually, if you're listening, I want you to think about your school age child and what's something that you just know isn't going as well as it could go, whether it be getting out of the door in the morning or going to sleep at night or eating dinner or getting homework done, a process of any kind that's not going well. And then I want you to think, okay, when that's not going well, what is a strategy we could do to create a better experience for us? And you can even ask your kids, what's a better strategy for us to do this? I wonder if you guys could come up with that and then we could just use it. We'll try it. These are all really great conversations just to continually have with your child because it will start to build their executive functioning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about this school year. It's September. It's the beginning. Most kids went back to school just last week. So we're all fresh and maybe still have a little summer brain, dusting off the cobwebs. So let's talk about how we're using this model this year and what parents can do if they want their children to have executive function coaching with Evolved.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, we have services for families. So you can contact Becky and set up your intake call during which we'll talk with you a little bit about your child and you can set up your preferred days and times. And we, of course, do a little work on the match because there has to be a connection between the coach and the child and what the child is needing in terms of executive functioning work. So it always starts with a phone call. That's how you come in here. That's how we set you up with whatever support you need. And essentially, the sessions are anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on your child. They can be online, they can be in person. And I think it's just a really important investment for this particular school year in general for a lot of our kids. In terms of, other ways we're using this model, we are actually continuing to professionally develop our tutors as well as different professionals in schools, as well as private tutors and learning specialists. So there is a book available on our website. You can actually download it for free and you can read all about the research and the model itself. And there are many different strategies in there that we also cover. And then in addition, there is a book on Amazon called 30 Strategies for Learning Well in College. And that book covers literally 30 strategies that I have taught kids in their freshman year of college around executive functioning so that they can meet the demands of that transition. So we're coming up with many more resources around this model this year. That's our intention, is really to get our hands dirty in that regard. But, I guess the other part I would just say to all of you listening is feel free to follow us on social and ask us in the DMs about any questions that you do have about your child, because I always post tips and things that our group comes up with there. So you can grab a lot of information as you go along as well and support.
Yeah, maybe you can put the link to the book in the show notes or something.
So that's a great idea. Yeah, I'll tell Sharon about that. That's great.
We have an offer, the Evolved Education Back to School Blueprint, which involves one of our big assessments in the executive function integrated coaching model, the Mindprint Learning Assessment. And our offer here is to have kids come in, take a Mindprint, and then we'll kind of help get them, based on their Mindprint, help get them up and running for the school year. If you want to talk about this a little bit, because I think this leads in really nicely into some of the executive function work that we do too.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was so excited when we came up with this offer because I just think it's a really nice springboard into what's possible for your student to optimize their executive functioning. So what it is, as Becky said, is you just can find out about it through Becky or on our website, but essentially your child takes 8 years and up, they take a Mindprint, and then we learn about the cognitive skills most closely aligned to success of being a student. And we go over that exam with you, the parents, and also create really a blueprint for the different types of strategies that we all could be working on together to make sure your child is learning at their best. That's really the goal. So this is really particularly great. Like, for example, we have a lot of these kinds of students, right? They are a little inconsistent. They're really dedicated students. They want to do well, but they maybe don't study as precisely as they need to. So there's a B here and there, and it's really, really frustrating when that happens. Or they missed some of the writing prompt pieces and didn't get the full score on their writing, or maybe they forgot to turn in one assignment, but most assignments are actually turned in. So there might be just a little bit of something there to address that would really launch a student into optimization. This service is particularly fabulous for that, as well as just providing overall executive functioning planning and that kind of work.
Absolutely. And we're calling it a back to school, but I think it can really be done at any point.
At any point, if you're listening to this a year from now, we're going to still be doing that. It's totally fine. Call us anyway. It's great.
Yeah, we will always offer this, but
100%.
we do it as a back to school just to get people jumpstart and up and running as the school year goes on. Mary, anything else you want to share about this model, about the executive function work we're doing? I think it's such good work. I'm so happy and excited to be a part of it. And you're so passionate about it. You know, I'm just as passionate about the executive function work as well. It's, kind of my whole life. So
yes, I know it totally.
Spend the next 3 hours talking about it, but I don't know if people want to listen for that long. Anything else you want to close up with?
Yeah, sure. Listen, I was just so excited to write this up because it really allowed me to think about this subject in a very formal way. And I think there's just a couple of, surprising pieces of evidence that I found that I'll just share with you in the book. Maybe this is clear to many of you, but executive functioning is affected by our emotions. So when our children are really not feeling great about a class or a teacher or something happening in the class socially, or they're just feeling kind of yucky in general, this can affect how a child employs their executive functions, right? So we have to look at that as an overall piece of the assessment. So we do ask our kids how they like each of their classes in their assessments, which I love doing. So insightful. It's really interesting for the parents to hear all of their input. But you could do this too at home, where you do an interview and ask your kids about what they like, what they don't like, and what they wish for within each of their classes, because you will likely get some really interesting information. And you could just keep saying, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more. I love doing
active listening.
Yeah, it's just, you get a lot of really nice insight.
How so? Yeah.
How is that possible? Yes, exactly. So I think that was really interesting. There's also this concept, which I didn't know too much about. So I did learn a little bit more about like hot and cold executive functioning. And, cold is really the processes that we operate in like more neutral contexts. Like when you're thinking like your metacognition, like, how did I do on that test? That's metacognition, right? Or attention. So I'm going to focus on what I'm doing right now and be in the moment, or problem solving, right? And hot executive functioning involves behaviors and emotional regulation, as well as decision making, social skills, insight, empathy. So it's a little more complex, right? And I think that it's fun for me to see which areas my students tend to perform really well in, where they have some of the challenges, especially in those hot areas, which I think are really fascinating, especially when you have a kid who's a little more impulsive maybe, and they're socializing as a middle school kid. And maybe they said something they shouldn't have with a group of friends. And now they're having a whole bunch of, different kinds of consequences coming their way based on that really impulsive share or statement. That can really send a child into some kind of turmoil. And I think it's just, that's something where if you have your child working with a coach, there's a safe place to sometimes talk about and inquire about any of those kinds of behaviors that might be coming up, so that a kid doesn't have to go through that all on their own, which I think is really important, especially as they are in middle school and high school. But anyways, you can read a little bit more about it in the book. I could also talk about this for hours. I'll leave you with one more invitation, which I think is always nice to have as a parent. So we are having a live event on Thursday, the 29th of September, and it's between 6 and 8. It's at Marymount Manhattan College on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And parents are invited to come to our Education Expo, which is an opportunity. It's an open house opportunity, an open house format where you can just pop in and really engage with different types of people that offer support for your family and your child. There's going to be our team. So we'll be providing, any information about school and learning, executive functioning, tutoring, any of those kinds of questions. And then we'll have also some members of our network there, including a pediatrician, an occupational therapist, speech and language pathologist, neuropsychologist, camps, specialist for the summer. So just a nice network of our people that we work closely with to really support students. It takes a village, and it's all right there. You can just walk in anytime, have a little chat, get a little information, just so you have it at your fingertips. And I really hope to see everyone there. We'll be posting this, as this episode comes out. So hopefully you can find some information just on our social or email us or go to the website and sign up. Would love to see you there.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This was great as always. I love chatting with you, and hopefully people got some questions answered about executive functions. And if anyone has any further questions, you can reach out to us, and we'll see you in October.
See you in October. Yes. I can't believe that's already happening. All right. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Evolved Education. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and write a review. You can send us any and all educational questions to hello@evolveded.com, and we'll try to address it in our upcoming episodes. That's Evolved Ed, EVOLVEDED.com. To learn more about how we can support you, go to evolveded.com and book a complimentary 15-minute phone call with us. Are you a professional educator? You can join our teaching school membership platform to gain support and engage in a community interested in learning together. Click on the link in our show notes to learn more.